What's the why? It's the question most people avoid until life forces them to ask it. We rush, we grind, we hustle, yet so many wake up every day feeling like something is missing, not because they're weak, not because they're lost, but because nobody ever taught them to stop and ask the one question that changes everything. Why am I doing this? Your why is not a slogan. It's not a goal. It's not a 5-year plan. It's the origin point, the spark, the foundation, the reason you get back up when everything falls apart. If you don't know your why, the world will assign one to you, and you'll spend your life chasing expectations that were never yours. Right now, more than ever, clarity is not optional. Purpose is not optional. The world is moving faster. Distractions are louder, and the pressure to keep up is relentless. That's why this moment, this one right now, demands courage. The courage to pause, the courage to question, the courage to choose the path that actually leads somewhere meaningful. Because until you understand your why, every win will feel empty, every loss will feel final, and every day will feel like you're running without moving. So let's go deeper. Let's push past the noise. Let's uncover the reason that will redefine everything that comes next. Purpose isn't something you discover at the top of a mountain. It's something that's been quietly shaping you long before you ever knew to look for it. Men especially grow up believing they must earn their purpose through achievement, status, or strength. But the truth is that purpose isn't waiting at the finish line. It's buried in the moments that shaped who you already are. The challenge is that most men are so conditioned to chase what's next that they rarely stop to reconnect with what's always been there. Identity is often forged in expectation, and men learn early to measure themselves by performance rather than authenticity. The world tells them to be providers, protectors, achievers, but not always thinkers, feelers, or reflectors. So they forget the simple truth. Purpose isn't assigned by society, it's remembered from experience. The passions, interests, and instincts they had as boys were clues, not distractions. What drove them before the world taught them what to fear is often the same thing that will drive them toward a meaningful life now. Women, on the other hand, often see a man's purpose more clearly than he does, because they notice the patterns he overlooks. When a man talks about what frustrates him, what excites him, what he can stop thinking about, women hear direction even when he hears noise. They see the way he lights up when he talks about certain ideas. They notice the responsibilities he naturally takes on without being asked. To them, these are signs of purpose resurfacing, not emerging from nowhere. Pressure disconnects men from themselves faster than anything else, and the fear of not being enough pushes them further from the purpose they already carry. The more they chase validation, the more they forget the values that once came naturally. Women often feel this shift and interpret it as emotional distance, when in reality, it's existential distance. He isn't pulling away from her. He's drifting away from himself. Remembering purpose brings him back. Clarity begins when a man becomes honest about what has always mattered to him, not what he was told should matter. The strengths he denies, the talents he hides, the dreams he minimized, those are the breadcrumbs, leading him back to the reason he exists. Purpose doesn't require invention. It requires recognition. And once a man starts remembering the moments that shaped him, he stops trying to be what the world expects and starts becoming who he was meant to be. The why shapes the how long before a man ever realizes it, because intention silently directs behavior even when the world only sees the actions on the surface. Most men are taught to focus on the what, the job, the goal, the responsibility, but rarely are they taught to uncover the deeper motive that gives those actions meaning. Without a clear why, a man can work tirelessly and still feel empty, because effort without direction becomes nothing more than motion. But when he remembers the reason behind what he does, the how becomes intentional and the what becomes meaningful. The way a man operates changes instantly when he knows why he's doing something, and it shows in the smallest behaviors. A man who works to prove something will approach life with tension, urgency, and fear of failure, but a man who works because he believes in something approaches it with steadiness, patience, and purpose. The how is transformed by the internal story he carries. If the story is insecurity, his actions become defensive. If the story is conviction, his actions become powerful. The same task can feel like a burden or a calling, depending entirely on the why behind it. The people around him, especially women, feel this difference more than he does because they read emotional intention faster than men tend to express it. When a man acts from a place of pressure or uncertainty, Women pick it up immediately in his tone, his energy, his presence. They know when he's working out of fear, and they know when he's working out of purpose. A man might say he's fine, but the why behind his actions tells the truth more clearly than his words ever could. Women often respond not to the action itself, but to the motive that powers it, the why they sense beneath the surface. Relationships reveal this principle even deeper because a man's why affects how he loves. If he loves to avoid loneliness, his how becomes hesitant and guarded. If he loves because he genuinely wants to build something with her, his how becomes consistent, intentional, and safe. The what, the gifts, the gestures, the promises only becomes meaningful when the why is grounded in genuine purpose rather than insecurity. Women don't remember what he bought. They remember what he believed when he gave it. Men rediscover strength when they understand that the why is not a luxury. It's the foundation. The how becomes honorable when the why is honest. And the what transforms from a list of tasks into a life that reflects who they truly are. Clarity becomes confidence when purpose takes the lead, because a man who knows what he stands for no longer hesitates about how to move forward. Most men don't struggle from a lack of strength. They struggle from a lack of direction. They are raised to appear confident, to act certain, to perform decisively, even when they're unsure of themselves internally. But real confidence isn't loud or forced. It emerges naturally when a man knows exactly why he's doing what he's doing. Purpose becomes the compass that removes doubt and replaces it with steady, grounded certainty. A man becomes more stable when his decisions flow from purpose rather than pressure, because pressure makes him reactive, while purpose makes him intentional. When he acts from external expectations, he hesitates, overthinks, and questions himself at every turn. But when he remembers what genuinely matters to him, clarity sharpens his vision. His choices become simpler, not because life gets easier, but because the noise around him stops dictating his direction. The moment a man aligns his actions with his purpose, his confidence stops being an act and starts becoming a natural extension of who he is. Women entice this shift almost instantly because they observe confidence differently than men. A woman doesn't measure confidence by how loud or dominant a man appears. She measures it by how internally anchored he seems. When a man is unsure of his purpose, she senses the instability, even if he hides it behind ambition or bravado. But when he is clear about who he is and what he stands for, she feels safe, grounded, and connected to his presence. Clarity in a man creates emotional safety for a woman, not because he has all the answers, but because he isn't lost within himself. Relationships often highlight the difference between forced confidence and authentic confidence, and that difference always traces back to clarity. A man trying to impress will act from insecurity, and insecurity always leaks through in inconsistency, defensiveness, or withdrawal. But a man living from purpose doesn't need to compete or pretend. His confidence shows up in reliability, steadiness, and the calmness of someone who knows the direction he's moving in. Women respond to that not with admiration of his accomplishments, but with trust in his character. Men regain control of their lives when they understand that clarity isn't a reward, it's a decision. When purpose leads, confidence stops being something they chase and starts being something they naturally embody. Your why turns resistance into resilience, because a man with a reason can endure what a man without purpose cannot. Resistance is inevitable in every man's journey: pressure, doubt, setbacks, and the silent battles he never talks about. But without a deeper reason to push through, resistance becomes overwhelming. Men often believe they're supposed to handle everything alone, to fight silently and carry the weight without showing the struggle. But when a man reconnects to his why, the obstacles don't disappear. They simply lose our power to break him. Purpose gives meaning to the struggle, and meaning transforms heaviness into fuel. A man's resilience grows stronger when his actions are rooted in something greater than ego, because ego collapses under pressure while purpose expands through it. When he fights only to protect his image, every failure feels personal, and every setback feels like proof he isn't enough. But when he fights for something he believes in, challenges become part of the process, not threats to his identity. Resistance stops feeling like a wall and starts feeling like training. Purpose reframes adversity, turning it from punishment into preparation. Men don't become resilient because life gets easier. They become resilient because their why becomes non-negotiable. Women often witness a man's internal battle long before he admits he's in one, because they see the emotional fatigue behind the physical effort. They can feel when he's fighting from fear instead of conviction, and they can sense when his spirit is starting to dim, when his why is missing. His frustration becomes sharp, his energy becomes inconsistent, and his presence becomes distant. But when he reconnects to purpose, women feel the shift immediately, not through his words, but through his renewed calmness and focus. He stops reacting and starts responding. He stops resisting life and starts engaging with it. Relationships reveal the strength of a man's why through the way he handles conflict, responsibility, and pressure. A man without purpose becomes overwhelmed by challenges and withdraws or shuts down, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't know what he's fighting for. But a man with purpose becomes more patient, sturdier, and more emotionally available because his resilience isn't rooted in pride, it's rooted in meaning. Women feel safer around men whose resilience is anchored, not forced. Men rise above resistance when their why becomes the force that steadies them. Purpose gives them the strength to keep moving, the courage to stay open, and the resilience to grow through what was meant to stop them. When the direction is clear, decisions become easy because a man no longer spends his energy fighting uncertainty. He simply follows what he knows to be true. Most men don't suffer from a lack of ability. They suffer from a lack of clarity. They try to analyze every angle, predict every outcome, and avoid every mistake. Yet all this overthinking only creates paralysis. But the moment a man knows exactly where he's going and why it matters, indecision loses its grip. Choices that once felt heavy suddenly feel obvious because purpose removes the noise that complicates the path. A man's confidence in decision-making grows dramatically when he understands that clarity is not about perfection, it's about direction. Men often feel pressure to choose the right path, as if one wrong decision will define their entire future. This fear keeps them stuck, hesitant, and overly cautious. But clarity turns choices into steps rather than judgments. When a man knows what he stands for and what he's aiming toward, he no longer measures decisions by how safe they are. He measures them by whether they align with his purpose. The burden of trying to get everything right disappears, and the responsibility shifts towards staying true to what matters. Women often see the impact of a man's clarity more clearly than he does, because they feel the emotional stability that comes with it. A man who lacks direction doesn't just hesitate in his choices. He becomes inconsistent, withdrawn, or easily frustrated. His uncertainty creates emotional ripples that affect the relationship, leaving her unsure of where he stands or what he wants. But when a man becomes clear about his path, he feels the shift in the way he communicates, the way he shows up, and the way he leads his life. His decisions become more thoughtful. His presence becomes more grounded, and his energy becomes more trustworthy. Relationships often highlight how clarity shapes a man's behavior because shared decisions reflect his internal state. When he's unclear, small disagreements feel bigger, simple plans feel complicated, and long-term conversations feel overwhelming. But when his direction is defined, cooperation becomes easier, communication becomes smoother, and commitment becomes natural. He no longer makes choices to avoid conflict or please others. He makes them because they align with his purpose. That kind of clarity doesn't just simplify decisions, it stabilizes the relationship around him. Men discover their strongest version of themselves when they realize that clarity is not something they wait for, it's something they choose to pursue. Once the direction becomes clear, the path stops feeling intimidating and starts feeling intentional, and every decision becomes a reflection of who they are rather than who they fear becoming. A meaningful life starts with a meaningful reason, because without a deeper purpose behind what a man does, even the greatest achievements feel strangely empty. Men are often conditioned to believe that success alone is the ultimate measure of a fulfilling life, yet many reach milestones only to feel an unexpected hollowness. That emptiness doesn't come from failure. It comes from succeeding at things that were never tied to a meaningful reason in the first place. When a man understands the true why behind his pursuits, his life stops feeling like a checklist and starts feeling like a mission. A man's internal world becomes stronger when he realizes that meaning isn't found in what he accumulates, but in what drives him to act. Most men are. taught to pursue goals, not purpose. And as a result, they confuse movement with direction. They work, earn, build, and push without ever questioning what it's all for. But a man who pauses long enough to reconnect with a deeper reason behind his effort begins to see his life differently. Purpose turns routine tasks into expressions of identity. It turns obligations into commitments. It turns responsibilities into opportunities. Meaning doesn't change the workload. It changes the weight of the work. Women often sense whether a man's life is guided by meaning long before he articulates it, because they feel the difference in his emotional presence. A man without a meaningful reason tends to drift, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't feel anchored. He becomes inconsistent, easily overwhelmed or detached, and she interprets this as distance. But what she's really experiencing is his internal disconnection from himself. When he lacks meaning, she feels the instability. When his life is driven by a deeper reason, she feels the roundedness. His purpose gives her something to trust, not just in the relationship, but in the way he moves through the world. Relationships highlight the power of meaning because shared life demands more than effort. It demands intention. A man who moves without a deeper reason struggles to lead, to reassure, or to commit, not out of unwillingness, but out of uncertainty. He cannot offer clarity when he doesn't have it within himself. But a man guided by meaning becomes consistent in his actions, steady in his emotions, and sincere in his decisions. Women don't need a perfect man. They need a man whose actions are rooted in something real. Meaning gives him that foundation. And it gives her a sense of partnership built on more than convenience or routine. Men discover a deeper version of themselves when they realize that a meaningful life doesn't begin when success arrives. It begins when purpose leads. A meaningful reason turns moments into memories, challenges into lessons, and relationships into something worth building. It gives a man a sense of direction that no title, income, or achievement can create. A meaningful reason doesn't just shape the path, it shapes the man walking it.